right, welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast, and I'm excited for our guest today. It's Steve Cutler. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, so excited. I've known Steve for a while, many years now, actually. And years ago, Steve was my personal trainer.
Yeah, probably more years than we want to admit, right?
I know. Yeah, it's gone by so. I mean, it seems like it was just yesterday, but when we really look at it, man, it's been.
Yeah, as we're talking, our kids are getting older, which means we're getting older, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be here. Honored that you asked me, and really, am inspired by the work that you do. So thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. No, yeah, and I appreciate that. But I really am excited for our listeners to get to know you because, you know, when you were my trainer years ago, I always left the session so impressed with the knowledge that you had. Because it seemed like no other trainer at the time was talking like you were talking, and the belief systems you helped instill in me as well. One quick example. I remember one time we were training, and you told me to pick a weight that's really, really hard for these triceps pull downs.
Oh, right.
And I where you can maybe get 8.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I remember I can't remember what the weight was, but I put a lot on there, and I barely could get 8. And then you said, okay, 25 more. And I looked at you like, you're nuts. And you're like, no, 25 more.
I think you actually called me nuts at the time.
Yeah, I probably did. I'm like, I probably swore at you or something.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing 25, and you were like, dude, see how we put these limitations on ourselves.
Right.
When you thought you were done at 8, you did 25 more. Anyway, so this is the kind of mindset, folks, that we're going to talk about today. I do need to give a shout out to our sponsor, Veracity Networks. Thank you for your sponsorship, and listeners, thank you for tuning in once again. And so, Steve, welcome.
Thank you again. Honored to be here. Great to reconnect. Like I said, I'm impressed with what you do, and honored to call you a friend.
Same here. So, why don't you tell our listeners where you grew up and a little bit about your family life?
Yeah, so I grew up not too far from here in a town called Bountiful, Utah. I was fortunate. I had a couple sisters, couple of brothers, and my parents were and still are just amazing people. And I had one of those childhoods that you look back on and think, wow, what a great time, what a blessed time that we had.
Yeah.
We were in that neighborhood where we had so many kids around and so many friends, and we would hop on the bikes and just go for a ride, or we'd go hiking or whatnot. You know, we were watching Stranger Things last night. My daughter said, "What's the deal with these kids going out on bikes, and don't their parents know where they are?" And I said, "That's how it was when we grew up. You know, we would leave the house and just go explore." And I think back to some of the great experiences we had, and it was a great upbringing.
Well, it was back when you could ride in the back of a pickup truck and not get arrested for it, right?
That's true. Or we used to ride in the back of the pickup truck, or my friend Lee, his mom had a station wagon. We'd ride backwards in the station wagon. And I think back to that time, oh my gosh, we would have been dead if we got into an accident.
I know. Yeah. Well, I want to hear more about this. And, for your listeners, Steve works currently for Lifetime Fitness. He's been there for how many years has it been?
Gosh, coming up on 13, 14 years.
And he was the general manager for several years, and he's now over their leadership and training. And for those that know Steve, you understand why he's in that position, because very, very good at leadership. He understands what it means and what it looks like. And you have a blog even that we're going to get into as well. But
yeah, I appreciate that.
You've been there for 13 years. And again, that dates us again.
Yeah, 13, 14 years. I started there in the personal training side, and then I ran the club here in Utah for over a decade. Now I've got a kind of a boring title. It's called Club Engagement Lead, but essentially what that means, it's not a boring job by any stretch.
Right.
But I work somewhat as a consultant to company or to the some of the other clubs to help to elevate them to a higher level.
Gotcha.
I've been involved in training a lot of our managers and through leadership training and development. And so I've got some great partners that I partner with in the education arm of our company. And I've been really fortunate to help to teach and educate leadership concepts, business concepts to a lot of leaders.
Right. Well, we will get into that, but I'm again going to jump back a little bit because, like I said, when I met you, you were saying things that I had never had heard before. I'd never heard it from, because I had trainers before you, and And I'm like, man, where does he know this stuff? And so you've been kind of like this leadership guy ever since I've known you, and which has been several years, as we talked about. Let's talk about growing up. I mean, where did you learn about these things? I mean, is it something your parents instilled in you? Let's talk about that.
I think that there's a lot of things. You know, growing up, I was a really I was one of those kids that I liked a lot of different things. You know, I was really into sports. I loved playing basketball. I remember there were times where if it was raining outside, I didn't care. I would go out and shoot hoops, and I just wanted to get better at anything that I did. Just passionate about anything that I took on. I wanted to improve myself. I loved artwork, and I loved drawing and painting. And you know, when I got to, I think it was my first year in high school, my mom took a couple of my paintings to a local art store. And the person that ran the store said, "Hey, I don't know who this artist is. These are great paintings. Who is this?" And she said, "Well, that's my son." And so the store owner said, "Well, would he like to have a job here, teaching classes and doing framework and working in the store?" So I did that and taught art and did drawing and painting classes for several years. So I've always had this insatiable desire to learn, and I don't know why. I remember a few years back, I pulled out some of the old shoe boxes that some of my papers that my mom saved were in from elementary school. And one of my teachers, first or second grade, had written something about me, how I was always trying to read and learn something new, no matter what it was. So I'm not sure where it came from. I know that my mom has always worked to improve herself and is a very loving and caring person. And my dad, I remember there were times where I'd wake up in the middle of the night to go grab a snack or get a drink of water, and there he is out on the couch or the chair reading until the wee hours of the night. And so I think I got a lot of that from them.
Sure.
My dad really is somebody that taught me a lot of the key lessons in life that I stick to now, and that I teach other people. We were talking about this yesterday as we were at the barbecue, the 4th of July barbecue, and I was telling him once again, hey, here's another lesson you taught me that I'm now passing on to other people.
That's awesome.
So I was really fortunate to learn a lot of great lessons from him early on. I think I learned a lot of love and compassion and kindness and caring from my mom, and a lot of the strength and the leadership and business acumen from my dad.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that about, being an artist. I remember as you were saying that, when we'd sit down in one of our sessions before we'd even go out there, you would draw something for me, and you were always really good at it, and you'd always draw in blue. Do you remember that?
I do.
And I'm like, why are you always drawing in blue? You're like, it's the creative color. It brings out the creativity. And I'm like, and to this day, I'm not kidding you, I write in blue. And it's because of you.
Yeah, so it's funny, but when we talk about learning from a lot of different sources, I've always been fascinated and passionate about finding who's the best in that area.
Right.
Deconstruct and learn from that person. And one of the times I was in my career and I wanted to learn and wanted to grow more, I was working with a lot of people who had injuries or physical issues that I just didn't know how to fix. And so I went to California and trained with a gentleman by the name of Paul Check. And Paul was at the time really the leading cutting edge in terms of corrective exercise and fixing problems. And I was having the hardest time retaining what he was saying. And through this process, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, why am I so dumb right now? What is going on? My brain, I've got this massive brain fog. Nothing was sinking in. And he walked over and he looked at me and he says, "You're struggling, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, how can you tell?"
How can you tell, yeah.
He says, "Because you've got a red pen and you're writing in red." And I stopped and thought, well, you're crazy, which anybody who knows Paul knows he's a little crazy.
Right.
And he said, listen, red is the color of power. If you write in red, your brain will not recognize it as something that you're learning new. Colors mean something to the brain. He goes, you want to learn new, you write in blue. You want to love it, don't highlight it in yellow because yellow is the color of fun. As soon as you highlight in yellow, you just want to go out and play because yellow is... You look at the sun, you want to be outside. You look at people wearing yellow shirts, they're fun, they're exciting, right? So he said, write in blue, highlight in green. Green's the color of love. I made that shift, and it was amazing from that point forward. Everything I've learned that I've written down, that I've highlighted, my retention has gone up several fold.
Wow.
So it's amazing what these little tips and tricks can do,
Sure.
and that I've learned from some of the great masters that I've had the fortune of rubbing shoulders with over the years.
Dang, I have to remember that. I've been highlighting in yellow, so I need to switch that now.
Yeah, you're probably going to want to go play afterwards,
Yes,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Or you never want to go back to it because you're like, yellow, I want to go play.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to know. Well, yeah, let's get more into that. So you trained under, this, what was his name again?
So Paul Chek was one of my mentors early on, and he was, somebody that I learned a lot of the corrective exercise from. And
Okay.
I was really fortunate. What I did, Todd, is like I do now. If I want to learn something, I write down a list of who's the best at this,
Right.
and I want to go learn from those people. And so I created kind of buckets or lists of, okay, I want to learn in this area, corrective exercise, and I had a list of 2 or 3 people. I wanted to learn a lot about bodybuilding. That was fascinating to me because sculpting a body, there was a combination of science and art that I just loved. Growing up, one of my idols was Leonardo da Vinci, and the artist and the scientist. And so, so I made a list of who are the people that I want to learn from. And I was fortunate enough to, I think I've hit 3 out of the 4 on my list of top bodybuilders that I wanted to learn from. I had an opportunity to get to know the great late Larry Scott, who was the very first Mr. Olympia.
Oh, wow.
And had a chance to learn from him. And, when I had my radio show a few years ago, he was a regular guest. And Frank Zane, who was the classic bodybuilder, had a chance to train with Frank before. Ron Williams, who's a local guy, who's a natural Mr. Universe, natural Mr. Olympia, had become a good friend. And so I make these lists of, okay, this is what I want to learn. Who are the best people out there that can teach this to me? And then I try and get in front of them. And if I can't, then I gather their information. I read their books. I listen to their podcasts. I do whatever I can to deconstruct and then figure out how that's going to work for me.
Yeah, wow. So that there comes that desire for always wanting to learn and keep learning and that. And I think that that's a testament to you and how good you are at what you do and everything that you do. And people that know you, I would agree. It's amazing the knowledge. Like I said, when I met with you, I was like, man, how does this dude know all this stuff, And you taught that to me as well. And I've really incorporated that in my life where I want to learn from the best. I want to read, study, and I make sure I put time into that. So it's neat that you do that. And I think for our listeners, if you kind of want to take things to a next level in your life, learn from those that are doing it the best way that you know.
I think so. And one of the biggest mistakes that I've made throughout the years, though, is I've tried to just mimic what they would do without, tweaking it to what worked for me.
Oh, okay.
And what I learned was that, well, there's great information and there's great philosophies out there. You have to test everything and you have to try it out and you have to say, okay, I'm going to test this concept. I'm going to run with this for a while, and I'm going to examine it. Yvon Chouinard, who's the founder and the CEO, or well, not the CEO, but the founder and the owner of Patagonia, one of my favorite companies. Yeah. He has said several times that the hardest thing in the world to do is to live an examined life. And when I heard that, I thought, what a powerful quote. What a powerful, inspirational and motivational thought. What does it mean to live an examined life? And so as I've thought about that over the years and I've tried to incorporate living an examined life into my life, it really is just examining on a regular basis, whether it's a daily or a weekly reflection through journaling or through conversation. Is what I'm doing working? Are my inputs giving me the right output? And so what I've learned over the years, the early mistakes of just trying to consume as much knowledge as possible. My intent was never to be the smartest guy in the room. My intent has always been to be the person that lives wisdom and that learns something, but then through practice and trial and error and failure and mistake, that I can be my best self. And I think that was,
love that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's so difficult sometimes, especially in our day and age with books and podcasts so readily available. We can information dump in our brains. What I found myself doing far too often is I would load myself up with too much information, and then I wasn't practicing what I had just learned. Yeah. So it was, essentially good stuff in, but then it was going right out the other side. So,
Wow. Well, a guy that I study and follow is Les Brown, and
okay.
he talks about how don't just share a message, be the message.
Exactly.
Be what, like,
Well, you're a great
practice what you
example of
preach.
that. So I can see that's, you live that mantra.
Yeah, I do. I try.
You do. Yeah.
And I'm not perfect at it, but I love what you said. It's like we can have all this knowledge and information, but if we don't apply it and like you said, see if it even works for you, if it's something you're going to continue to do in your life, I guess we end up being a fool. You got all this stuff,
Right.
but you're doing nothing with it.
Right.
But wisdom comes from, I've got the awareness, now I'm doing something with it, and I've tested it and it works, and now it's a part of my everyday life.
Yeah, and I think through the trial and error process, one of the things that early on, when we talk about childhood, early on I was very blessed with great. How do I put this? In a positive and negative way, but both were blessings. So in a very positive way, I grew up in a very supportive family. I grew up in a very supportive set of friends and neighbors and whatnot. But at the same time, the negative aspect of that is I had a lot of what we call, Carol DeWick in her book Mindset talks about as fixed mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
And a fixed mindset is essentially if I believe something that is completely fixed. So for instance, for me, growing up, I was told over and over and over again by many well-meaning teachers and leaders and people, hey, you're a great artist. And so I believed that fixed mindset. And so what that meant was that when I created a great piece of artwork, or something I thought was great, or something other people thought was great, then that fed into the fixed mindset. But as soon as I didn't, then the psyche fell apart.
Okay,
and then when you're in a fixed mindset, you either do what we all do, where we either fight, or we flight, or we freeze. And so if it was a fight situation, if somebody was critiquing something, I would want to argue back. If it was a freeze moment, maybe it's in the classroom and I just didn't feel comfortable saying something, and I would just freeze. Or the flight would be I would just retreat into my room and I would paint and draw and paint and draw, not for the sake of becoming better, but to, quote, prove other people wrong.
Oh,
and so I realized after reading DeWick's book a few years ago that I had this fixed mindset in many areas of my life. Now, the antithesis or the opposite of that is the growth mindset, which is that through work and effort and doing the right things that we can grow in any area or any aspect. And so, I made the mistake very early on and throughout adolescence and childhood and early adult of holding on to too many fixed mindsets and in different aspects, different areas of life. So, fast forward, I got married. We got 3 kids. I hadn't drawn or painted for years and years. And then one day I thought, I'm going to do this again. And as I started into it, I was awful. I couldn't draw anything.
Right.
I couldn't paint anything. The only artwork that was out there really was when I would, when I was training you or other clients, and I would sketch out concepts or ideas,
stuff,
right? And they were probably horrible. But what I realized at a certain time as I started to examine my life is that I had this fixed mindset in my artwork. And so I finally just burned away that idea that I am a, quote, good artist and said, no, through hard work and through effort, I can create what I want. I can do what I want to do. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort. It's going to take trial and error and failure, and then success comes later. So I've been a big fan of failure, and I failed many, many times in many areas of life, and have learned from those things. And I think that that's really the key is test it. You take an idea, but then test it out, try it. And through those failures, we can examine and see where we didn't do well, and then take that next step forward.
Yeah, it's ultimately how you get better. It's a concept I talk with my clients a lot too, is like how life happens for you.
Right.
It's all happening for you. Yes, it may look like a failure in the moment, but ultimately, if you learned from it, it really isn't a failure ultimately.
Exactly.
But in the moment it felt that way, and it, because you couldn't quite do it. But as you've learned through this, you look back and go, wow, I'm glad I, had all these struggles and these trials, because it's made me who I am today.
Right.
that much stronger.
And I think so I read something recently. Do you remember the TV show Mythbusters?
Yeah.
So what's the guy's name? Jamie. No, the other guy.
I can't
Not the one with the
remember
big mustache. Anyway,
Right,
the other guy.
dude.
He's starting a new TV show. So I was reading this article about what his new TV show is going to be. And he talked about failure and success. And he said, in the scientific process that we use, we don't call it failure and success. We call it a different iteration. So we did one iteration of something. It didn't work quite right. So then we move on to the second iteration and then the third. And I love that concept, and I've adopted that ever since. I've been teaching that to some of my the folks that I work with and some of my clients. And let's recognize the failure. It's okay to recognize we all fail at things, but now let's just recognize it and say, hey, that was the first iteration. It didn't quite work. Let's go to the second iteration. Let's improve it. Let's modify it, and let's make it better.
Yeah, I think scientists have an old saying that, I actually get excited when I failed because I just learned something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I learned what didn't work.
Right.
Yeah. Story of our lives.
Yeah, right. Very cool. Well, so you've been at Lifetime Fitness and you've kind of shifted roles a little bit. Mm-hmm. You started out being, training people, physically and mentally and spiritually.
Right.
Now you're more in a leadership role for the company. Let's talk about that shift and then what that looks like.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I think when you and I first met, I was working at a local health club called Life Center. And in fact, I think you had TJ Buxton, the general manager, owner of that on your podcast.
Yeah, he was on. Yep.
What a great guy. We all
awesome.
love TJ and Mindy and the whole family there. And I was really fortunate. They gave me a start in fitness. Before that, I was working in people's homes doing personal training, and TJ gave me my start.
Yeah.
And so I did that for quite some time. And I've been in the fitness industry now almost a decade, almost 2 decades. And I really had an opportunity to grow and cut my teeth on overall health and wellness and strength and mindset and, progressing people through the personal training. So when I went to Lifetime, part of the reason why I went is I wanted to be able to expand my ability to influence people. At the time, I was training a lot of folks. I had a radio show on Saturday mornings that was getting out there. I had co-authored a book with a group of folks called The Power of Champions.
Yeah.
And I wanted to help more. And so I said to myself, what can I do? And then it hit me that if I learned how to do the business really well and I could make an impact and help people to have jobs that would then go impact other people's lives. If I could teach other leaders, then that would cascade out.
Right.
And really the genesis of that, Todd, came from years ago as I was sitting down and I was writing down, what do I think my mission, my vision for my life is? What's my real purpose? Again, I was really fortunate by a tough situation early in life that I don't recall, but I've been told the story. When I was 2 years old, my mom came into the room and found me on the floor and I wasn't breathing. And she did CPR, resuscitated me, and for the next several months I was in and out of the hospital while they figured out what was wrong. Which my friends will tell you, they've never figured out what's wrong with me because, just looking at me, it's tough to tell. But, I felt very fortunate that not only did my mom give me life, but she gave me life twice. And I got a second chance on this world. And so as I was sitting in my house one day, pondering and thinking, what is my life about? What do I want to do with my life? Mm-hmm. It hit me that the reason I'm on this earth is to help transform millions of people's lives. And when that voice inside of me spoke that to me, that scared me. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's no way. Because the logical side of me started doing math. At the time I was training, and I thought, how long would that take? If I'm training people to do millions of people's lives, I can't remember what the math was, but I would have had to have lived hundreds of years at my current level to transform millions of people's lives. So then I thought, well, I've got the radio show, and we get that, we talk to that many people. And then we put, we got the book, and we put that out there. And so, but it just didn't add up. And then it hit me that if I got involved in teaching other people who could then go lead others, that's the way I can achieve my mission.
Okay.
And so for the past, 12, 13, 14 years, I've just had this passionate drive to help other people become better that are leaders so that they can lead other people, so that when I'm an old man or whenever I die, I don't know when that's going to be,
right.
I can sit back and say, yeah, I achieved that vision for my life.
Wow, that's powerful. That is a neat thing, and I didn't realize that happened to you when you were 2.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I love how you said your mom gave you life twice.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a very special bond. I've got the utmost love and respect for her and my dad, and in fact, most of the time I carry a coin in my pocket. I was born in '76, and so there's the bicentennial dollar bill or dollar coin that I carry as a reminder that was the first time. And then when I was quote unquote given a second chance at life 2 years later. So I carry that coin, and the reason I do that is years ago, someone taught me this concept that wherever you are, you make ripples and you make an impact. If you want to make positive ripples in people's lives, just like you toss a stone into a lake, the ripples can extend all the way across that lake. And so I've had a sort of a strange ritual. Whenever I go into a new space or a new job, I take that coin that I carry with me as a reminder of what my life's purpose is. And I walk into a space and I drop it. And it's a symbolic thing for me that what I do matters. And I'm either going to be intentional and focused on that, or if I'm not intentional, it's going to matter in a negative way too.
Right, yeah.
And so it's important that I recognize that and have accountability for what my actions are.
Wow. Well, again, this is just a glimpse into why you are who you are. You do those things, I mean, that's like going the extra mile in my mind when you say that. Like, I go in, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to symbolically tell myself and the world and the universe, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. This is the impact I will make.
Yeah.
And I just love that you do these little things behind the scenes. And I think those little things add up to the big things, right? And so
I think so. I hope so anyway.
Yeah. Well,
you hope so.
Well, I think they do, actually. I mean, again, to see where you're at now, like even when I first met you, and like you said, you had your start at the Life Center with TJ, and to see where that propelled you to where you're at now, it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, and I've been very fortunate. I mean, there's been so many people in my life that have helped me along the way, that have been we all have our failings and our growth opportunities. And I've been very fortunate to have people in my life that have either looked beyond that or have helped me to grow through those things. And so I think that, these little rituals that I do are for me to pay back and or pay forward some of the providence that I've been given throughout life. I think I've been very blessed to have just amazing folks in my life.
Sure, yeah, we all can say that, and we couldn't do it without help from others.
Absolutely.
So what does a day look like for you, Steve? Like, I mean, you obviously get yourself in this, this mindset and this way of looking at yourself and the world. What does a day look like for you? Is there, a lot of guys I talk with in this space, they have a morning ritual, or they do something every morning to kind of start the day. Do you do something like that? I
do. And the interesting thing is, I've studied morning rituals. I think that's been a big thing in the self-improvement industry lately.
Yeah.
So I've read a lot of books on that. I've listened to a lot. In fact, there was one that was Morning Rituals of Creative People, and it went all the way back to Beethoven, and some of it was interesting and weird all at the same time. I mean, if you want to think about your heroes or people that we idolize, their music, their artwork, you'll think, oh my gosh, they were strange people, which I think we're all strange to a certain degree.
Right.
So what I found, though, is for me, I can't keep the same ritual all the time because I get too stale. And I find that if that becomes a fixed mindset for me. So there are a few things that I have to do every single day. The first is I have to reflect at the end of the day. I have to take some time to reflect. And whether that's through journaling or whether that's my wife and I love to go on walks together. And so we walk and talk a lot at night and just how was the day, what happened, and it's a self-reflection. It's a time to connect, and so we do that often. And so there's got to be a reflective piece to my day.
I like that.
At the beginning of my day, I need a time to set up my intention and my focus for the day. And sometimes I do that in my journal. Sometimes I'll take my notebook that I use for work and plan my day out. But I essentially come back to what's the main thing that I need to focus on today. There's a great book out there called The One Thing. Well, I say great book. It's an okay book, but it's a great concept, just because the author repeats himself time and time again.
Okay.
And essentially what he says is that through the focusing on just one thing, and you're asking yourself the question, what's the one thing that if I do this with great impact and with great power, that it will impact everything else. And that allows us to get massive thrust in our life. You think about a fighter jet that is taken off from an aircraft carrier.
Right.
It's got to have massive thrust. It's
Sure.
got to move very quickly, and it's got to get elevation very quickly.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't do that by focusing on 20 different directions. The thrust comes in one direction.
One
right?
direction, right.
And so
That's a good way to look at it.
what I've learned from that concept is that if every day I have one major focus that I'm going to do that aligns with my goals, aligns with my vision, then I can have massive thrust in that particular area. And so every day I have to have some time to think about what is the one thing that I'm going to accomplish.
Cool.
Or one of the people that I've studied for many, many years, a gentleman who just recently passed away, his name is Charles Poliquin. And Charles was a leading health and strength coach.
Okay.
But his mindset training was amazing. And he said, what he did every day was he would say, what's the one thing that I'm going to be proud of at the end of the day? And so I've adopted that as part of my questioning that I do in the morning.
Wow, I love
as
that.
I look back, what will I be proud of at the end of the day?
Wow.
And then every day, I have to move. I've got to exercise. I've got to move my body. I split my movement up into two different segments. I'm either doing something to train myself, whether it's strength or cardiovascular, and then the other is just activity. And so I track my steps and the activity just so that I make sure that I'm not getting too lazy and that I'm constantly moving. I think. Being in fitness, a lot of people say, oh, well, it's got to be easy to stay in shape. Well, it's not. I'm an old guy just like you are. I have to move. I have to work out. I have to watch what I eat. And, now going into the mid-40s, I've got to watch what I eat even more. So movement has to be a part of it. And then just conscious of what I eat, which consciously means that I eat donuts from time to time. So
right.
You got to enjoy what you have.
Got to enjoy a donut every now and then.
So those are kind of the key cornerstones.
Okay.
So I would say my morning routine,
like
my evening routine, and my daytime has those elements to it. But how I do it depends on seasonality.
Sure.
It depends on my what I need to accomplish. There are times where my morning routine is more extended in the wintertime because it's darker longer, and so I spend more time in the morning prepping for my day.
Prepping for the day.
In the summertime, I prep as quick as I can so that I can get outside and walk or go for a trail run, and
get as much sun, enjoy it while we have it.
Enjoy what I can.
Yeah. I love that, and I love that what you said. What will I be proud of by the end of the day? Is that how you said that?
Right. What's the one thing that I can look back to and be proud of at the end of the day?
Man, so for you listeners, I mean, I think if we just incorporated that, and I'm speaking for myself right now too, if I incorporated that in my morning ritual, because I do something too, and I think this about me. I'm like this all or nothing kind of guy. I'm all in. I think I struggle with the fixed. I'm fixed. This is the way I'm going to do it. But I love how you have that flexibility piece in there, and I think that's important. But I want to incorporate that into my morning ritual. I love that.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I think one of the things I observed about you years ago that it makes you really good at what you do is that all in. And it's funny because in our day and age, we have this concept of we want just great balance in life. And I'm not a big believer in that. I think that there needs to be some harmony there. You think about a great symphony. My wife and I love to go to the Utah Symphony and sit and listen to the great music, and there's never balance in there, but there's harmony. It flows well together. There's a conductor that's making sure that the music flows. And whether it's an amazing piece from Chopin or Beethoven or whatever, there's harmony. And I think that's how our lives should be. And
like
so
that.
when you think about what does that look like, it's got to be different for everybody. I think what I've noticed with you over the years is you have this great passionate focus, and you just drive and drive and drive, and you keep going. And that's what's made you very successful. It's made you really good at what you do. Back to the book I was telling you about with the weird morning routines.
Yeah.
Every great artist, every great composer, every great engineer, scientist, they were not balanced people. They were people who were very passionate and focused in one area. And they did that really well. And then everything else was fine.
Yeah.
I don't know that the rest of their lives were completely falling apart.
Right.
But they focused on being the absolute best at what they did.
Gotcha.
So I think that we can take a lesson from that. That if you want to be the best car mechanic, then you learn everything there is to know about cars. If you want to be the best stockbroker, you learn everything there is to know about that. I'm not saying you should neglect the rest of your life, but I think life also gives us clues and has threads where you can take success from one area and move it into the next.
Very well said. Very well said on that. Well, so, currently we were talking about what you do with Lifetime Fitness now.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk a little bit more about that. Like, let's get more into that role. So you do leadership training. You're on the road quite a bit. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate with the position that I have. I am home every other week. And then when I travel, I primarily travel Tuesdays through Thursdays, maybe a little bit longer. But I'm home on the weekends on my travel weeks. And I'm really fortunate. I currently work with 6 different clubs, helping to elevate the leadership and the whether there's a financial or some sort of metric that we want to improve. Okay. And so I'm just blessed to have this opportunity to go in to different markets, different areas, and meet with people. Some of that is through group trainings. A lot of it is through one-on-one meetings with people and helping to analyze the business, break it down, or to get into the mindset piece. In fact, I've had a lot of conversations as I have been in this new role with our leaders, pushing the boundaries of their mindset. Where are they stuck? Where are they in that fixed mindset? And what does it take to open up and to see and move into that growth mindset? So it's a great job, a great opportunity. It keeps me very busy, and it's very rewarding and very difficult at the same time. I think that's part of what makes it rewarding is it's a challenge constantly.
Well, it's kind of like that's your wheelhouse too, really. I mean, it's kind of what you do. Even outside of that, you've always been a leader, in the way you do things. Yeah,
I've naturally been drawn to things like that. I think, early on as a kid, I was always the smallest. Me and my friend Lee that I grew up with, we were the 2 smallest kids in school. Mm-hmm. And so being the small kid with this big puffy curly hair, that was something that didn't always lead to self-confidence when I was young.
Right.
I questioned, why am I like this? Why am I the only one with this curly hair? Why am I the smallest kid? Why am I not strong like everybody else? And so that changed, I would say probably late junior high school. Something just clicked inside of me that I really valued the uniqueness. I valued the fact that I could see things a little bit different than what people could see. That artistic eye made me very observational. I valued my crazy curly hair, and I grew it out and had a big Napoleon Dynamite style afro, and I loved it. And so early on, I think like most kids, we deal with self-esteem issues, and I did. And I saw all of my weirdness and strangeness in there, like we all have. But then probably junior high school, I had an opportunity to just awaken to this other side and say, hey, these are not bad things. These are part of what makes me unique. And so once that happened, I think I naturally gravitated towards leading people and wanting to be that. It had always been inside of me, but wanting to help people to improve their lives, to be better, to feel good about themselves. And so, I from that point on, it just has always been a desire and something that has woken up inside of me.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so cool that you get to do what you love, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very fortunate.
Yeah,
Very fortunate.
It's kind of a rare thing, unfortunately, that a lot of people are doing things maybe they don't really want to be doing. And
to
see
I think
you
so.
doing what you love and what you're passionate about and what you're good at, I mean, that's got to be really fulfilling for you.
It's fulfilling, but I will say, it's not all roses.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that sometimes when I talk to people and they'll say, "Oh, this is great. You can go teach and you can help people and you can educate and you can, work through the business and do those things that you're passionate about." But passion is something that I've worked hard on. I have a passion and I have a drive for these things because I work at those. And oftentimes that comes through resistance. It's like you and I used to talk about back in the day.
Yeah.
When you're lifting a weight, you're lifting against resistance. And that's the way your muscle gets stronger.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing in every aspect of life. The challenges that we have are what make us stronger. Now, I don't think we need to make our lives more difficult. I think that life gives us enough challenge as it is, right?
Yeah.
But the job that I have, I'm very fortunate to have because it is difficult and because it's within the framework of where my passion and my drive is.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Steve, that you said that, because I think people will say, "Oh, you love what you do. So everything's just perfect and fine." But there's still the challenges. There's still setbacks. There's still days where it doesn't feel like it's the thing you love the most, and it's difficult. It's like this mountain you're climbing sometimes.
Right.
So I'm glad you point that out. Is it's not always just everything's perfect, and I'm still getting stretched, and I got to grow. And some days I might have a rough day. And
absolutely.
Right?
I think back a week or so ago. It was just one of those days where I thought, "Oh my gosh, I've got to be the worst person in the company right now. I'm so bad. What am I doing?"
Right.
Because I think sometimes when you're working so hard at something and it just doesn't quite come the way that you want it to, the results don't quite come the way you want it to, and you make mistakes and you mess up here or there. Those are the times where it's important to pause and reflect and live that examined life and say, okay, so it's not going the way that I want. Great, that's life.
Right.
So I got to keep moving forward. Welcome to life. That's one of the things that my dad taught me that I've stuck with the rest. Ever since. He gave me a great bit of wisdom early on, where he said, "Hey, if it is to be, it's up to me."
Mm.
And I love that saying. I've taught that I don't know how many times since then.
You share that with me all the time when we were training.
So nobody is going to make your life better. You have to make it happen. If you want to get in better shape, it's up to you. If you want to improve your finances, well, everybody's done it. That's done it the same way. They've learned about it. They've studied. They discipline. They've done. Success leaves clues, and so you learn about it and you do it. And so on those bad days, on those days where it just doesn't feel good and you feel like you're getting kicked in the gut,
right?
It's important to just stop and say, "Hey, this is normal. Welcome, welcome to life. That's great." It's not always going to be easy,
right?
So you just got to keep pushing through, and there will be better days.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I think another thing that you keep alluding to and you've talked about as well is the your purpose,
right? Right.
Talk about the importance of that.
Well, I think that's
in our lives.
To me, that's everything. I've taken that overall purpose and I've broken it down into the different areas of life. I've written out a mission statement that's been modified several times over the years, a vision for my life.
Yeah.
The core has always been the same: to transform millions of people's lives. Well, then you go down from there, and I draw these concentric circles around where my life, is and goes out from there. And so I think about my wife and I think about my kids and I think about my family and those that I'm working closest to. And if my life is moving in a direction that achieves that purpose, then I feel good. If it's not, then I have to pause and I have to say, okay, where have I gotten off? What is it that I'm doing that has caused me to go in a different direction? Because we all lose sight of that from time to time.
Oh yeah.
But I think that a great leader said that the most important word in the English language is remember, and I've loved that. That's stuck with me for probably 30 plus years since I read it. That if we can remind ourselves of a few key things on a regular basis, life's going to be a much easier thing. And so part of what I do when I journal is I go back to my purpose. I go back to the question of what's the most important thing. And if I've lost my way in some areas, I don't always sit and analyze it. I just say, okay, well, I messed that up, so let's get back. You know, why worry about how I got lost? Let me get back on the path. I think there's some value to be in the examination process to say, okay, if I'm off track, how did I get here so that I don't do it again?
Right.
But oftentimes we get what we call analysis paralysis. We just don't move forward because we're analyzing too much. And that's been a problem of mine where I finally just say, all right, doesn't matter. I just need to move forward and get back aligned, because as soon as I'm aligned to my North Star, as they say, as the old sea captains would align their compass to, then I'm going to be moving in the right direction.
Wow. Again, very well said. And I think when we analyze too much, I notice, at least with my clients, is that it ends up turning into where they start playing the victim.
Right.
Right? They start beating themselves up. Geez, why do I keep screwing up? It's like, okay, made the mistake. Okay, what are you going to do to get back on track right now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I love that you say that, because we tend to victimize and then excuse ourselves when we do that. Because if I find the reasons why, that's only a valuable tool for a short period of time. Mm-hmm. If I know why I did what I did, great. I can learn from it. But if I continually tell myself the story of why I did what I did, now it's an excuse.
Right.
And I'm a big believer in self-accountability, and just wherever I'm at, going back to what my dad taught me, if it is to be, it's up to me. Well, I've got to be accountable for those things. I need to account for where I'm at in life. And it's because of my actions, my thoughts, my beliefs. That's why I am where I am. And so once I tell the story and come up with the excuses, now it's almost like I've separated myself into two different people. And now real me that has this vision and this focus for life isn't running the show, isn't driving the car. Excuse me is doing it. And so I think once we've analyzed if that's appropriate, then we use that as a tool to say, okay, now I know, so that I won't go back.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to realign with what my purpose is so that I move forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, awesome. That's great. Well, if there's someone listening right now and they're struggling and they're trying to find, I guess, their purpose, or they're struggling with, leadership in general, that they're not quite being a leader that they think they would want to be, what advice could you give someone who's just maybe struggling, just trying to get, kind of where you're at right now in your life? We're doing what you love, finding those kind of things. What would you say?
I would say the first thing is to get moving. I think that far too often we try to sit and meditate, think through all of this stuff, and life doesn't come to us. Our purpose doesn't come to us. I found my purpose through a lot of trial and error. I found my purpose through moving quickly. And so I would say first move and then observe. As you start working in life to move in the direction that you want to. Maybe you want to improve your mindset so that you're not constantly victimizing yourself. Live life and pick up books and read and listen to podcasts that are aligned with your goal of improving that one thing. And then observe what your patterns are. Observe what you're doing. If you want to get in better shape, start moving. If you want to improve your relationship, start moving. Talk. Get out there, talk to people, make the mistakes. The only way we get better is through moving forward and then observing along the way. If something didn't work, all right, well, welcome to life. That's great. It's not always going to work. And so now observe and say, well, how can I fix that? Gotcha. And so it's, we all make mistakes all the time, constantly. Like, you and I talking here, I know before the podcast, you'd sent me some questions and I went through them. And then afterwards I thought, well, hey, it's going to be a conversation and I'm sure I'm going to screw up a million times, and that's okay, because the intention is there. If I'm moving in the right direction and I observe in life, then I'm going to be moving in the right direction on a constant basis, right? So I think for those that are struggling, it's just start moving, observe, And then at some point, when you've asked yourself the question, what is my purpose? There may be a big resonant time where you say, okay, now I get it. What I found, Todd, though, is through a lot of my coaching clients, they don't always have that big aha moment, and that's okay. Yeah. They may have a moment where they say, right now, this is what I'm here for. And that's great, and that's a step that gets them going in the right direction. And then as the season of life changes, then their purpose changes as well. So I don't know that it's always this aha moment. I think sometimes it's a building process.
Yeah, I agree.
But it happens through movement.
Yeah, no, very good. Get up and move forward. I love it. Well, you know, if you could give us a challenge, because one of the things when I was training with you, you always would leave me with a challenge. I mean, I even said at the very beginning, I'd do 25 more. I'm like, I thought you were crazy. I'm like, there's no way. I'm fried.
I was. Yeah.
And, and another thing, I got to say this too, because this is a cool, I have so many stories about you, but I'll never forget, we were looking at if you go to a fitness center, they have the dumbbells all lined up and they're usually right up against the mirror. And I'll never forget, we stood at the 40-pound weight, and then you said, Todd, look at the 40-pound weight. Now look down where it goes from 35, 30, all the way down to 2.5. And then you said, see that? That is no longer a part of you anymore. And then you said, now look ahead, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. You go, that's your world now. You're not going back in this direction. And it was just, for me, I've never forgotten that, because it wasn't just about the weightlifting. It was more about just life in general. Like, I'm not going to settle for, I'm going to go back down to the 10-pound weights and I'll just curl those all day long. You're like, no, dude, you're curling 40s, dude. And you're going to curl the 45s and you're going to do the 50s. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, dude, I cannot curl 50. And you're like, no, you are. This is your world now, from now on. And anyway, such a challenge. And so I want to bring that up because I'll give us a challenge, give our listeners a challenge that will cause them to stretch and grow and expand on their belief system that may be holding them back.
Yeah, and before I do that, I want to tell, as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story.
Okay.
So I remember after that, I don't know what it was, a couple of weeks or whatnot, I came walking down the stairs into the weight room, and here's Todd cranking out 50-pound dumbbell curls. Or 55s or whatever it was. I mean, it was some astronomical weight that you hadn't gotten to before. Yeah. And I just looked over, and you looked at me, and I remember like our eyes connecting. You put it down, and you were so pumped, and we just shared this really cool moment because it wasn't just that you had achieved something physically. The mental work to get to the physical accomplishment that you had done was just unbelievable. And again, that's a testament to your focus. That's a testament to the hard work that you put in. So there's a lot of great ideas out there. There's a lot of great challenges, but I think what you did a great job of is you took them on and you moved forward. When you moved forward with it, you got better mentally. And I think that that's an important thing. And if I were to give a challenge, I would say this, as I think it's a biblical passage that talks about that when I was a child, I acted like a child and spoke like a child. And when I became a man, I put childish things away. So I think that there is a point in time where we have to memorialize our growth. We have to say, okay, this is a moment where I won't go back. Never again am I going to do this. Never again am I going to say this. Never again am I going to allow this to happen. Right. I've moved beyond that. And so if my challenge would be to make a list of 2 or 3 things. So it's a really short list, obviously. Right. Make a list of 2 or 3 things that you can say never again to. What will you never again go back to? Are you accepting a certain level of lack of commitment in your life, a lack of commitment in your relationship, a lack of commitment in your health? Are you accepting a belief that you just know is no longer serving you anymore? Yeah. And what are those 2 or 3 things? And then once you've identified what those 2 or 3 things are, ask yourself the question, which one of those is the most important thing? What is my one thing that I need to do right now?
Okay, love that.
Once you've identified that, figure out how you're going to step forward and just say never again. And I think that, in life, we don't think about life the way that we should oftentimes, we think about time rather than moments. And our life is made up of moments. When these moments are memorialized, they become memorialized in our mind because we tell a story like we're talking about today.
Right, yeah.
Or we write it down, or we make an event out of it. So I think that the key is, once we've identified, once your listeners have said, hey, here's the one thing that I will say never again to, well, then you have to figure out, what are you saying yes to? So if I'm no longer going to do this thing, what am I going to do? And find a way to memorialize that. Do you write yourself a letter? Do you go out to dinner?
Cool.
Do you, how do you create this amazing moment so that you can say, I'm no longer going to be this type of person in this way? It's amazing what happens when we do that, because we think in moments, right? When you think back, some of the best moments of my life, I was talking to my kids and my wife about this yesterday. Our marriage, when the kids were born, those are moments I remember. There were aspects about them that I remember.
Yeah.
But I also remember moments that I created. And I think that that's an important piece for the listeners to say, okay, now that I know my one thing that I will never again do, what am I going to do to move forward? And I'm going to memorialize this moment so that it is the thing that I just will remember for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Wow. I love it. What a great challenge. And it's simplistic as well. And I love that too, because
I'm not a very smart guy, so I have to keep it simple.
Well, I don't know about that. Wow, dude. I'm telling you, I could go on all day with you. This has been an amazing experience for me. Brings back a flood of amazing memories I've had with you. You have taught me so much. And I don't know if I even, told you back in the day. I hope I did. I think I did. How thankful I am for you and for what you've taught me. And like I said, I use some of the same principles you taught me. I teach to my clients. I teach it to my kids. I'm trying to live them the best that I can.
Right.
And I just want to thank you, Steve, for being who you are and for the influence and light you are in this world.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you're like a brother to me. I can't tell you how honored and grateful I am that you've asked me to come on here.
Yeah.
You've been an inspiration to me as well, and I think it's like I said before, I've really been fortunate to brush shoulders with a lot of amazing people, and you are certainly on that list.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Well, if people wanted to reach out to you and want to get to know you better, or ask you a question or anything like that, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So probably a few different ways.
Okay.
I've got my leadership blog, I update every once in a while. It's not something that I do on a regular basis. It's more so of hey, if there's a concept or an idea that's really striking me, I'll put it up there.
You'll put it out there, yeah.
And that's leadercompass.blogspot.com.
Great.
And I'm sure we can link this in the podcast,
yes,
right?
Yes, for sure.
If people want to find me on Instagram, it's just Steve Cutler with a underscore right at the beginning or the end. I can't remember. Anyway, but you type in Steve Cutler and it's on there. Or you can find me on Facebook. Those would probably be the easiest ways to find some of my writings and some of the things that I've done.
Okay, great. Well, there you go, listeners. What an amazing story. Again, I just pinch myself that I get to sit across from amazing people, and you're definitely, like I said, you're on that list. You're at the top of that list with me. You're inspiring, man, and I know this is going to inspire a lot of people. And listeners, please, after you've listened to this, if you know anyone that needs to, a little pick me up in life or some principles that will help change their life, share it. Put it out there for everybody to hear this. A wonderful story of Steve. And again, Steve, I can't thank you enough for taking the time today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, there you go, listeners. Enjoy, and until next time.